To become a better leader of tomorrow in just a short amount of time, subscribe to our Raj Shamani Clips channel. What's the difference between successful entrepreneurs and versus people who kind of quit on just the entrepreneurship journey after a while? I would not call them unsuccessful entrepreneurs.
Well, I can...
Like people who make it versus the people who don't make it. And the judgment criteria can be wealth, happiness, impact, anything. I'm just saying like people who make it versus not make it.
I would answer this very directly because I think the question is a very relevant and important one. The people who haven't made it, there is no category like that because actually that's not a category. So it's not that I'm comparing it to two, but the difference between somebody who made it and somebody who called it a day, because there's no such thing as I didn't make it.
Yeah.
It only means you called it a day. And therefore, the difference between the two is you didn't stick it out. You didn't stick it out because if you stuck it out, you wouldn't be in this category that you have it's a self-claim category. It's not a category that is a category. I didn't make it. There is no such category. I didn't stick it out. That's a category. I copped out. That's a category. There's no question about the fact. It may not be the success you planned it to be, but the fact is that the people who got it because they eventually became successful. Okay, so if you ask me which of my journey, whatever else, is because that's the journey. And you're and then eventually becomes a new benchmark. And okay, there's a certain benchmark for which you feel you may not fall, but you could. So that is a progressive one. But the people who did not make it opened a category that doesn't exist, but it's a self-made category called I didn't make it. Because I don't think anyone should sit in that category that says I didn't make it. Why? Of course, you may have failed. You may have got bankrupt. Shit would have happened to you. Lots of things may have happened. At that particular point, your life is over, your career is over, your reputation may be... I don't mean reputation as in you did something and it was crooked. So without ethics, your reputation of a failure, those will fly out of the window in 1 minute. So I think that category should be nixed.
But don't you feel like there are people who are not cut out for certain things? And they should not try that. Like, do you think like
what do you mean? So they're not cut out for
entrepreneurship? Like, just asking you a question. Like, don't you feel that some people should not be an entrepreneur and they're trying to become entrepreneurs, or some people should not be
So then it's not that they didn't make it. They tried something and they made the wise decision that I need to go back into a zone which I know is going to be my security zone. Like I think taking risks or working and taking that responsibility is not my best. I perform better when I'm part of a overall support system. That doesn't mean you didn't make it as an entrepreneur. You did that and then you took a good call that says for good reason, not because I failed, not because I didn't make it. So, and I'm trying to dissect this here because I think I've lived all of those journeys enough to be able to dissect that and say very clearly, don't go do it because if you think I have the option to go back to a job, you will. If you start on your journey, and I think you asked me in the very beginning, whatever one or two things that I started from my early childhood, and I said one is, you're on your own, and the second is you don't have a choice. So if you ask me today, given that I had zero opening bank balance and didn't have money like everybody else thinks today is their birthright that I won't start a business unless somebody funds me. Today, at that stage, there was no such thing. It was the reverse of that. So for the next 10 years, not having any fiscal support, but still building something, you go with the fact that I don't have a choice.
You have worn multiple hats, okay? There's a media company, and then there's EdTech, and then there's multiple things. There's a sports franchise, right? Like everything you've done. And you have tasted success in like multiple of them.
After lots of failures. But
of course, we will come to failures. I'll come to that. But I want to understand like, there are people who are really good at one thing, but when they try to get out of their zone of like a level of expertise, they kind of fail in like other things, right? So what do you think, like what makes somebody, or what are the fundamentals, what is that one thing or two things which makes someone successful in like multiple things?
Yeah,
because it's so difficult to succeed
you're putting
like so many
domain
things.
Expertise and figuring that out. I mean, the first is the supposition that I was a media expert when I decided to start media. I wasn't, right? I mean, again, that was serendipity that got me there. The day on which I said I want to start something was not the day I knew I wanted to start something in media. At the time at which I started it, there was no words and vocabulary like media and entertainment.
But now the world describes you as like media expert and all of that.
Correct.
Like,
but at that stage, it wasn't the case, right? But I used to do a lot of weekend, as a hobby, weekend theater. I used to do front of camera hosting for Doordarshan at that particular point in time. So why and how? Those were all desperate to get pocket money, and theatre was something I came not having from a lower middle class house, not having too much of education. So soft skills for me were very important, and theatre, debate, elocution helped me there. So I think those were the early years where I felt, wow, I'm having fun and I'm earning pocket money to go out on a date. I mean, that was real pocket money. It was like 250 rupees on a weekend or 500 rupees on a weekend kind of situation. But enough for you to be able to move up in your lifestyle and not go home and ask your parents for even $50 at that particular point in time. So it was great fun. And so my first part of my career was not because I had an inkling towards media and entertainment, but because I was exposed to it. And then I said, why don't I make a business of it? So I think that's kind of how it works. I mean, I think if I went forward so I think domain expertise, when you're in a job or, when you've taken engineering or technology, that's a good one. But that doesn't mean today you need to be a specialist only. You can be a generalist. So all I'm saying is people can do something great for the entire part of their career. I'm sure if you're a great lawyer, the probability of you switching and saying, I want to be a doctor for the rest of my life is not going to work. So there'll always be those examples, right? But a leader in an oil rig company can become a CEO of a media company. Why? Because both are equal in terms of their probabilities of success. You'll drill 100 times and have 3 times when the oil will hit the ground, right? I'm just saying it as So it's about how you build the organization, how you look at if you understand consumers, you understand trends, you can actually transcend many, many sectors.
Okay. We'll come to consumer trends because that's my favorite area. But speaking on the topic you said about taking risk on entrepreneurship, right? As an entrepreneur or as a job, as an employee or as anyone, you need to take risk in order to go ahead. There was a very interesting quote which I heard. It says, getting rich is about taking a lots of risk with small amount of money, and staying rich is a lot about taking small risks with lots of money. And to me, that was like super interesting. But when you think about it, what essentially the quote is trying to say is take calculated risk at any point of your life, right? And you believe in that, like every entrepreneur should keep taking risk. But what's the right way to take a calculated risk?
Yeah. So firstly, I mean, risk is a very subjective word, right? Because the most important part of a risk is your own appetite. Your own appetite, not just financially, your own appetite mentally. A lot of people think, because can you have the shock absorbers to take whatever? Because if you're resilient, it doesn't make a difference where the financials will come from. That could get figured out in most spaces. If you have the mental aptitude for risk, it will work very differently. To the quote that you just mentioned, I think my ratio of success to failure is about 8 failures to 2 successes. Okay. So let me explain my formula, if not my quote. Because I do believe that and this has evolved over a period of time. It's not a strategy that I walked into. But at the stage where I walked in with a DNA that says, what have I got to lose? In a snakes and ladders game, I'm still in the game, even if I go from 97 down to 6, because it's still 6, it's not 0. Okay, so what's my worst case? I'll go down to 6, but I'm still in the game. And I don't know, I might still go up there because there's ladders to climb and snakes to slip down from. So I think my ratio is that when I take the risks, the outcome or the failure is a 1x. It could be I invested 10 crores and it was a write-off, or I hired somebody and it was a write-off, or I started a business and it's a write-off. But whatever that is, it's a finite zero-sums game. But when you're taking those kind of risks on a sustained basis, and I don't mean risk just for the sake of taking risks, but if you've got these opportunities, the probability of you having a 40x, 50x, or 60x gain versus a 3x or a 4x gain in the things that really work, you're setting yourself up for that. And that's what's worked for me as a formula, that while there are enough of the minus 1x's, but if 2 of them are 30x, that's 60. And 60 minus 8 is 52. Now that could be 32, but it still won't be 2.
Yeah.
And I think now it's not just a mathematical equation, and it's not about only monies. It could be, as I said, one could be a decision about personal, one could be a decision about people, one could be a decision about exiting something before its time, giving up on something before its time. All of those are 1x's. But because you're moving your journey along with that in mind, your probability of high success versus good success is really where wealth creation happens.
Thank you so much for watching this clip till the end. For more such amazing, insightful clips, please subscribe to our channel.